He looked around my apartment on the day I moved out, smiled, and told me that between the carpet, the paint, and the cleaning, there would be nothing left of my deposit. He said it the way you say something to a person you are sure will simply walk away. 11 weeks later, he was the one writing a check. Not for my deposit. For 3 times my deposit, plus my filing costs, signed in a room with an officer of the law watching him do it. People ask me if I got lucky. I didn't. I had something he never imagined a quiet tenant would bother to keep. Every photo, every email, every date, the receipts. But to understand how a man who held all the keys lost so completely, you have to understand what he assumed about me on the very first day. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment in an older building for almost 3 years. It was nothing fancy. Thin walls, a radiator that knocked at night, a view of a parking lot. But it was clean. It was mine. And I paid my rent on the first of every month, on time, every single time, for 34 months in a row. I am not a loud person. I do not argue in hallways. When something needs doing, I write it down, I file it, and I follow the steps in order. Most people read that as someone who was easy to ignore. My landlord certainly did. Let me give you one small example so you understand exactly what kind of tenant I am. On the day I first got the keys, before I unpacked a single box, I walked through every room with my phone and took photos of everything. The scuffed baseboard by the window, the chip in the bathroom tile, the old stain already in the bedroom carpet, the one that was there long before I ever set foot inside. I emailed those photos to myself that same afternoon, so each one carried a date that could never be changed. Then I did the same thing with the signed lease, the deposit receipt, and the building's move and checklist. I did not do this because I expected a fight. I did it because that is simply how I handle anything that matters. Write it down, keep the proof, hope you never need it. For most of 3 years, I never needed it, and then everything changed all at once. For the first 2 years, the building had a kind older owner who fixed things the week you called. Then he sold the building and a new owner took over. Let's call him Victor. Victor managed the building like a spreadsheet with people living inside it. Repairs slowed down, then nearly stopped. Rent notices arrived in stern, threatening language, and he had one clear belief about tenants, one he never bothered to hide, that we were temporary, replaceable, and not worth his time unless a check was involved. The first thing I noticed was the heat. As the weather turned cold, the radiator in the bedroom stopped working entirely. I sent a polite email asking for a repair. No reply. I sent a second one a week later. Nothing. I called and left a message. Silence. To Victor, I was just a name on a rent roll. He had no idea I was already doing the one thing that would eventually undo him. I was keeping every single message with every date attached. After a month with no heat in one room, I sent a formal written request, the kind housing rules in my area specifically require, asking him to make the repair within a reasonable time. I kept it calm. I kept it factual. I kept a copy. His reply was the first time he ever truly spoke to me, and I will never forget the tone of it. He wrote that the apartment was perfectly fine, that I was being difficult, and that tenants who cause problems do not tend to get their leases renewed. He ended it by reminding me how easy it is to find someone else willing to pay. It was not a repair. It was a warning. He was telling me, in writing, that if I kept asking for what I was owed, he would simply push me out. I read that email twice. Then I did something that probably surprised no one who knows me. I printed it, dated it, and added it to the folder. Because a threat in writing is not a threat anymore. It is evidence. Here's what Victor never understood. He thought he was dealing with a problem he could intimidate away. He was actually building a case against himself, one message at a time, and handing me every page of it. Because I knew something he did not. I knew that in my area, a landlord who ignores a required repair and who threatens a tenant for asking is not in a position of power. He is exposed. And I knew there was an office whose entire job is to deal with exactly this, the local housing authority, where being calm and organized matters far more than being loud. He had declared his intentions in writing to the one tenant who saved everything. So I stopped sending requests that he would only ignore. Instead, I started preparing. Victor did not wait quietly either. Men like him rarely do. A few weeks later, I received a notice slid under my door telling me to vacate the apartment in 30 days. There was no proper reason listed. No legal grounds, just a date and a demand. He had skipped every step the law actually required for ending a lease, and he had done it on paper with his own signature at the bottom. For a moment, standing in my hallway holding that notice, my heart sank. This was serious now. He was actually trying to force me out. But then I looked at the page again, the way you look at something you have read about 100 times. And I realized he had just made his single biggest mistake. An eviction notice with no legal basis carries no power at all. In my area, Served the way he served it, it is a violation all on its own. I did not panic. I photographed the notice on my floor with the date. I scanned it, and I added it to the folder right behind his earlier message where it fit perfectly. Over the next 2 weeks, I did something very simple. I put everything in order. I built a clear timeline, the dated move-in photos from 3 years earlier, proving the carpet stain, and the wall chips were never mine. Every repair request I had sent about the heat, with the dates ignored, his written threat about not renewing difficult tenants, and the improper eviction notice with no legal grounds at all. Then I read the housing rules for my area, slowly, twice, the way Victor clearly never had. I learned exactly what a landlord is required to do, exactly how a deposit must be handled, and exactly what happens to a landlord who keeps a deposit in bad faith or retaliates against a tenant for asking for repairs. And there it was, written into the law itself. In my area, a landlord who wrongfully withholds a deposit can be ordered to pay the tenant up to triple the amount. The very thing Victor was so casually planning to do carried a penalty 3 times its size. The man who thought the rules existed to protect only him had never actually read them. I said nothing more to Victor. People like Victor cannot be reasoned with in a hallway. They can only be answered in the one place where the paperwork finally matters more than the volume of a voice. That place was the housing authority and the formal hearing that follows when a tenant files a complaint. A neutral officer, a table, a folder of facts on one side, and on the other, a man who had never expected to be asked for any. So I did the only thing that mattered. I filed the complaint properly on time, and I requested the hearing myself. The hearing day arrived. Victor came in relaxed, almost amused, the way a man looks when he is certain a quiet tenant will fold the moment things get serious. He had brought nothing but himself and a confident smile. I had brought one binder. When it was my turn, I did not raise my voice, and I did not accuse him of anything. I simply walked the officer through the timeline, page by page, the dated photos from move-in day, proving every flaw he wanted to charge me for was already there before I arrived. The repair requests he ignored for over a month while one room had no heat. His own written words, warning me that difficult tenants do not get renewed. And then the eviction notice. Improper, baseless, signed by his hand. The officer studied each document. Then she turned to Victor and asked him a simple question. She asked him to explain the legal grounds for the eviction notice he had served. The room went quiet. Victor opened his mouth, and for the first time, he had nothing written down to hide behind. Then I turned to the deposit, the one he had promised would vanish into carpet and paint. I laid out the move-in photos beside his move-out claims, side by side. The carpet stain he wanted to charge me for, photographed and dated on the day I first got the keys. The wall chips, the same. There was almost nothing he could honestly attribute to me, and the documents proved it without a single raised voice. I did not editorialize. I did not insult him. I simply let the dates sit there in the light and speak for themselves. Then, calmly, I noted the part of the housing law that he clearly had never read, that withholding a deposit in bad faith in my area can carry a penalty of up to 3 times the amount, and that threatening a tenant for requesting a required repair is its own separate violation. It was his own logic, turned around. He had treated the rules as a tool to push me out. I had simply pointed those same rules at the one person they were actually written to stop. The officer looked at his claims, then at my dated photos, then, for a long moment, at Victor. By the end of that hearing, the eviction notice was thrown out entirely. My full deposit was ordered returned, and because the withholding was ruled to be in bad faith, the penalty was applied on top of it. But the deposit was not the end of it. Because I had filed a formal complaint, the housing authority did what it does when a landlord's conduct raises a flag. It opened a wider look at the building, and the heat I had spent a month asking about turned out not to be only my problem. Other units had been waiting too, quietly, the same way I once had. Victor was ordered to bring the building up to code, every unit on a deadline, with inspections to confirm it. The threatening shortcuts that had worked on people who never wrote anything down stopped working the moment one tenant did. He did not lose in some dramatic shouting scene. Men like Victor rarely do. He simply sat at that table and signed what the officer placed in front of him, 3 times my deposit, my filing costs, and a repair order with his name on every line. A few weeks later, a neighbor from the building stopped me on the sidewalk. She told me the radiators were finally fixed. All of them, for the first time in over a year. She asked how I had managed it. I told her the truth. I told her I had simply kept every email and every date. I never raised my voice. I never damaged anything. I never broke a single rule or told a single lie. All I did was refuse to let a man with all the keys decide that a quiet tenant was not worth the truth. Here's what Victor never learned and what it cost him. The most dangerous person to push around is not the one who shouts back in the hallway. It is the calm one who has been keeping the dates, saving the emails, photographing the cracks, the one who already has the receipts before you even decide to lie. He thought I would be easy to push around because I was quiet. He discovered, far too late, that quiet and powerless have never been the same thing. So let me ask you, have you ever been underestimated by someone who held a little power over you? And watch the documents prove them wrong. Tell me about it in the comments. And if you believe Victor got exactly what he deserved, hit that subscribe button, because here at Karma Fyles, the bill always comes due. The next story is about a client who thought a small service provider would simply swallow a huge unpaid invoice and go quietly away. He was very, very wrong.